Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, everybody. Today I'm interviewing Diana Scott Sho, owner, baker at the Luscious Little Dessert Company in Westchester. Welcome, Diana. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
My pleasure.
All right. Diana, before we get into your business, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I live in New York, Yonkers. I was born in Virginia. What do you say? I'm the oldest of 5, so I'm the more adventurous one. I went to NYU. I went to Peter Kump's French Cookery School. Been married for 26 years to the same loyal, long-suffering man, I think. And let's see, I've worked at various things. I don't know, you get to where I got to by going through the river. So I've been a personal assistant, a private chef, a professional organizer, and now I'm doing something I truly love, which is baking.
Nice. Well, on that note, what led you into baking? Did you know that this was something you wanted to do, or did you just stumble into it?
No, I've actually baked since childhood. My great-grandmother, the first 4 or 5 years of my life was spent basically in her kitchen. So it's kind of in my DNA. But as a business, I stumbled into it.
Okay.
About 20 years ago, a little more than that actually, when I got married, I went to Peter Kump's French cooking school for about 6 months, and I thought about starting a catering business. And for a time, I did work as like a private chef to a group of doctors who had evening hours. So I did something like, Blue Plate or Blue Apron? I actually made meals for them and delivered them to their homes, put them in the fridges with little notes on how to warm things up. And that lasted for a while. But when I started my business in 2010, all that was long over with. So it was a stumble. But I'm naturally restless, so, the work comes easy.
Okay, right. But in terms of inspiration, anything triggered this? That you wanted to start your own bakery?
I saw a need for a good bakery in Harlem. I had a really dear friend who's since passed on, who wanted me to help one of her assistants make some extra money. We were brainstorming one day and came up with the idea of selling my pies, sweet potato pies, to personal care salons in Harlem. So we sort of sit down and put it together because, I don't know if you know, but barbershops and salons in the African American community they're kind of sanctuaries. People have standing appointments. They go there. They spend hours. They laugh. They talk. It's really, outside of church, it's kind of a homecoming. It's really nice. And in those hours, you get very hungry. And I've noticed, because I get my hair done in Harlem as well, I've noticed people come in and they sell things, anything from fruit to CDs. So we decided that we would sell sweet potato pies, and it kind of took off. I hadn't planned on it going that far at the time. We sold 2 afternoons a week, I think Friday and Saturday afternoons. I would spend the entire week baking. I was exhausted, and I thought, we'll just help her out a little bit, get over this hump, and back to life as normal. But I was hooked for some reason. So we started to increase. At first, we sold sweet potato pie and sweet potato pound cake, and then we added cheesecake and cookies, and it was just too much for our little baskets to carry. So we got little baby carriages. We put the baskets there and samples, and we walked. Around that time, there were maybe a little more than 3,000 personal care salons in Harlem. We couldn't get to all of them, so we started selling at the farmers markets and still doing 2 afternoons a week, and it just gradually took over my life.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah. And looking at you personally, what personal attributes, traits, or qualities contribute the most to your success, you think? And how do you think you developed these along the years?
I think most of my own personal attributes, traits, come from my childhood. I was taught early on what strength was by watching the women in my family. They were kind and honest, hardworking, loyal, loving to a fault. But they took pride in their families and their accomplishments. It was like, it was just very interesting. It was what was expected, more or less. So I don't think, I've just always been that way. It worked for them, so it works for me.
And how do you think this approach or these qualities you have played a role in your success? Because a lot of people start businesses such as yours and never succeed, but you succeeded. So how do you think these traits made you a success?
I'm stubborn.
Well, there you go.
I'm stubborn. I always think of Morgan Freeman. There's this wonderful saying. It's the easiest way to fail, or the fastest way to fail, is to quit. So I don't give up easily. I try and exhaust every possibility. In for a penny, in for a pound, kind of. You don't. I was also taught you don't start something you don't intend to finish or continue. There's just you can't be iffy. So it's always, but life's a struggle. If you think about it, in your own business, you're struggling for yourself, which for me is much more gratifying. But whatever it is, I think you just keep it moving. So that's basically what it is. I've learned to adapt and grow. I've changed, The other thing is business, it always changes. You've got to, especially today, you've got to be a little bit ahead of the curve. And open to changing. It's not set in stone. And I think maybe that's one of the reasons I'm still here, doing what I do.
Yeah.
And my husband, I have a great husband. I've been married 26 years to the same man who makes me crazy but challenges me.
There you go.
He's the kind of person that, questions everything, and even if he doubts the answers, he supports me. So that support is very important.
Yeah, that's huge. I hear this all the time.
Yeah, early on when I was baking for the salons in Harlem, if I was up until 2 or 4 in the morning baking and packing, he was right there with me.
Nice.
So that's been really one of the most important things. You need to have support.
Yeah. And one thing also that is a given is that there's no straight line to success, right? There's always these ups and downs. And can you tell us a little bit about these major adversities that you had to overcome to achieve your goals?
Where can I start? There's so many. I'm not so sure I've overcome them all, actually. Fairly large things. I didn't know that much about the business of baking, which caused a lot of setbacks early on. There are a lot of licenses and insurances and just things you need to know that I didn't know. But I believe in finding answers, so I read a whole lot of books. I found different classes, which I think are very important. But early on, some of the things that really threw me for a loop were, I applied for a trademark in 2012, I believe. At the time, my company was Baby Cakes and Pie, because I make single-serve Southern desserts. And I had come up with that name maybe 20 years before. I found it in one of my journals when I was at the cooking school. So I applied for the trademark. It was a approved, but within that 30-day period, it was challenged by another company in New York City that I didn't really know existed. And when I found out who they were, I was really surprised because, they're a completely different concept of a bakery. But it was challenged, and it would have taken a lot of time, effort, and money to work through it. And I wanted to spend that money on quality ingredients in my business instead. So I changed the name, but it was like losing a child. I had worked out this whole thing with the baby carriage. It was part of the brand. So I had to stop and reinvent myself. So I changed it to the Luscious Little Dessert Company, which a few people thought was a little too long for the name of the company, but it's worked for me.
That's good. Well, that's a very good example that sometimes you need to let go to move forward, right? So that's a great example. What keeps you going? When you get to a point where, you're exhausted, you just can't do this anymore. And usually when things start to fall apart, they all fall apart at the same time. So when you ended up in these particular moment, what kept you going?
Oh.
You're stubborn. That's what you said.
Well, yeah, I am stubborn, but it's not just that. I just don't. I don't give up until I've exhausted every possibility. I drink a little coffee, have a nap, and keep it moving. And I do that with everything. My husband's my chief tester, so whenever I add a new dessert item to the menu, it has to go through him first. And he's the most honest human being I know. And I will spend hours putting together a recipe, and I'll bake it, and I'll give it to him, and he'll taste it, and he'll look at me and say, "It's very good, but you can do better." Now, this makes me crazy, but I do better. So right. It's I guess the quest for perfection.
Okay. Well, taking a step back. So these are things, from what I understand, from what you're telling me, you're taking a step back when you face these walls. Instead of trying to hit your head against it, you just take a step back, breathe, and then just go around it, right?
No, there might be a little bit of head beating too. There just might be a little bit of that, but not much. I do manage to step back and try and look at it from different angles. I don't know, I guess I have a cousin who says that I have the belief in the impossible, but I don't see it that way. It's just there are so many different ways to conquer all of your trials. You just have to keep moving to do it. Most people kind of stop and say, well, that didn't work. But I don't know how to do that.
Well, that's why entrepreneurs are so important for our country. I mean, this is how we move forward, because these people like you just don't see the impossible. They just make it happen somehow. So that's what makes it all so great, that all these entrepreneurs make it happen despite all odds sometimes. So
that's true, and I find also that if you just don't spend too much time on the obstacles, it does come together. Mm-hmm. And it might not be the way you envisioned it, but it happens.
There you go. So
I think that's the reward.
And speaking of vision, what do you envision for your business in the next 5 years or so?
I'm actually planning on trying to open a small cafe, bakery, catering establishment. That would sort of bring the community in, kind of. I want to do poetry jams and storytelling a couple evenings a week, something like a little bit of the moth. Because I studied writing at NYU, and it's one of the things you never get over. So I'd love to do something like that. Soup, sandwiches, really great, all natural kinds of things, well done, with poetry.
And do you have any idea how you want to market that? Because obviously nowadays it's all about getting the word out for people to know that you exist. The old movie Field of Dream, you can no longer just build it because they won't come.
That's absolutely true, which is really No, I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to get the idea out yet. I think I'm building my business now in a way that I'm letting the people that already know who I am know more about me. So I've added a pound cake club, and the reception's been pretty well, gone pretty good. So I think, I don't know. You know, everything comes with a story these days.
Yeah.
You used to be able to make a really good product and sell it and disappear, but everything comes with a story. So that's something I've got to work on. Because I'm basically an introvert, you know. I mean, I could spend hours in the kitchen baking and listening to like Nina Simone and be happy. But being in business kind of forces me out of my shell. And selling myself is the hardest.
Yeah.
But I think if you make it good, they'll come.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, obviously, when I say if you build it, they won't necessarily come. I mean, it's more of a generalization, because if you do have people that know you already, they'll be the ones that will spread the word, because it's all about, you know, this day and age is about spreading the word, right? I mean, if you got a good following, people that like you, they'll talk about your other business and they'll get others to come. So that's a good thing. Going back to your bakery, if you don't mind, Diana, some bakeries, they seem to focus on beauty of the cake, cookie, whatever goodie they make, but the taste is not necessarily there, but they draw customers in because it looks good. Other bakeries, which oftentimes are less well known, they have much better tasting products, but then it's hard to get people to come in or get people to try them out. So where do you draw the line between making a product that looks good and tastes good?
Well, you know, people eat with their eyes, so beauty is a factor. But if you're drawn in and the taste isn't there, you feel like you've been tricked somehow. I say if you can't deliver both beauty and taste, then you just shouldn't bake at all. I've donated more undesirable looking desserts than I care to remember. You know, if sometimes it'll fall or, you know, it'll spill over. But the taste is still there, but I wouldn't sell that because I wouldn't buy it. So I have really high standards for my desserts. I believe if folks are willing to part with their hard-earned money for a treat, then they deserve the best I can offer them. So it's got to be beautiful and it's got to taste good. Packaging is important.
Yeah.
But well.
But what's your favorite item in your bakery? Let's talk about your favorite item.
Oh God, I have two.
Okay.
I have my two favorite items. The first is the sweet potato pound cake with the brown sugar glaze, because it was the first real dessert that my great grandmother taught me to make. And she took the most pride in that dessert. I mean, she slow roasted the sweet potatoes until the natural sugars caramelized. And then she made this most simply divine pound cake. It was not too sweet. And she left all the, like, you know, what she called the glory to the glaze, which she made with brown sugar. So that I never get tired of. I mean, I if I can't sleep, I eat that at 3:00 in the morning sometimes. The other is the lemon lime cheesecake with a gingerbread crust.
Oh man, I'm getting hungry.
I use her gingerbread recipe and it's made from scratch, but I've added like little bits of crystallized ginger to give it that pop. And it's a light, fluffy, tangy. Most people think it reminds them of like a really good key lime pie. But I love it not only because I love the way it tastes, but the idea of being able to collaborate with my great grandmother, you know, a little bit of the old and the new. I think she'd approve of that.
Well described, because I can almost taste it just the way you described it. So that's good.
That's wonderful.
What is the one item you've never tried or have yet to master? Is there any such item?
Yes, there is, and it makes me crazy. There is. This comes with the story. There was you know, when I was a kid, my mother had these two friends. They were sisters, and they owned a little cafe in our town in Lynchburg. And every Saturday afternoon, after I had done chores that like 3 men should have done, you know, like, you know, cleaning baseboards and beating rugs and polishing the silver if I had to, whatever, she'd give me a small allowance, and I was allowed just enough for like a meal and a movie. So I could go to her friend's restaurant and I could have lunch and then I could go to the movies. And I would always go there and have like a cheeseburger, or they had the best fried fish sandwich ever. But I always had this like amazing lemon chess pie. It was heaven. That little red vinyl booth in the back of the restaurant. Eating that pie every Saturday afternoon. So for the last 30 years, when I was old enough, I do remember asking them for the recipe, and they wouldn't part with it. So for the last 30 years, I have tested that recipe. You know, I won't, I'm always making lemon chess pie, which is really kind of funny. And over the years, I've come up with a recipe I called the almost perfect lemon chess pie. It's the closest I've come to date, but it's still missing something.
Oh, wow.
But I'll keep going.
Great story. And before we wrap it up, what advice could you give aspiring bakery owners? They just don't know where to start. What would you tell them?
Test the water first. Start small and selling to family and friends and see how you do. Get a partner. Surround yourself with supportive people, because baking's labor intensive if you do it right. And also know that you can't do everything, so you really need help. I think a lot of people start a business and they take on too much, and that's one of the reasons a lot of small entrepreneurs fail. It's just a lot. It's a lot. And I made a lot of mistakes, but I would definitely, if I had to start over, get a partner.
Great advice.
And take business classes. You know, there are like SBA programs or local nonprofit organizations that offer courses to budding entrepreneurs. And I think that could help, because you'll be able to build a business plan and really flesh out your idea, so you'll know what permits and licenses are involved. And, you know, a lot of people should actually, I think, if they're thinking of starting a business, look at it from that end to see whether or not they're a good fit for that business. You know, an idea isn't always enough to keep you going. And it takes a little while to start making money. It doesn't happen overnight. There's this wonderful, every overnight success takes 10 years. So you really have to, be in it for the long haul if you're going to make something of it. So patience, be good to yourself, because, we tend to beat ourselves up, especially in business, or forget ourselves. So, you just have to pace yourself so that you don't run out of steam too fast.
Great advice, Diana. Thank you so much. Now, how can our listeners learn more, or even get in touch with you if they have questions or they just want to talk? Oh,
please. You're more than welcome to visit my website at www.lusciouslittledesserts.com. For more about me or any questions or comments you might have, I'd welcome them.
Perfect. Well, Diana, once again, a huge thank you for taking the time to share these stories with us. This was very interesting, and now I'm really hungry. I gotta go eat.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Diana.
Have a good day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.